Well, I guess somebody pissed in Dustin Nguyen's cereal, and that somebody is Marvel Comics. Dustin took to Instagram to unload on a publisher, and boy did he. Please look at the screen because I'm going to read what he wrote as he wrote it, mistakes included. Quote, also, everyone I'm not working with at Marvel can fuck themselves. I've asked nicely for the past 15 years on behalf of every artist. Stop fucking creators over. You're not getting another cover from me until then. Drown me. I'm okay with your minimum wage bullshit. Please, Dustin, don't hold back. Tell us how you really feel. And he did, but before I get to it, let me just lay out the groundwork for why he's so pissed. Apparently, Marvel doesn't pay well for covers or pages, and they don't like paying royalties either. Based on some of the industry responses his post got, this has been going on for years, at least the last 15, probably longer. Dustin went on to explain himself a little more, and you could tell he's mad because he's tripping over his words in print. Quote, okay, getting hits earlier than expected from this one, and I'm kinda glad because I got words, but if this really bothers you, I'm sorry. Marvel has been undercutting creators from the start. Unless you're getting 6 to 7K a cover, then God bless. I hope you're getting a piece of the MCU in after sales. They're not. Very few people get major payouts from Marvel in general, let alone for anything used for the MCU. When it comes to cover rates, I think you could count on two hands the number of artists who command a high rate. That's not because there are not a lot of talented artists. It's because Marvel doesn't want to pay the rate, so they just don't hire those people. Sean Gordon Murphy responded to Dustin's post, saying that he's been blacklisted by Marvel for the last decade, and maybe Marvel would work with him if he took a third-tier book and cut his rate by a third. He's had issues with them ever since he did that ABCs of Marvel's book as a lark, and then sold it at a convention, and then Marvel found out and sent him a cease and desist letter, and then took ownership of the book from him. But the idea that Marvel, a company owned by Disney, so there's no shortage of money, would underpay artists for their work is crazy. But it gets worse. Dustin said, quote, between them and DC Comics, they are the only one that doesn't pay a royalty for overseas sales. Think, America is the originator of superhero comics. Japan has manga, which we love. Europe has that cool ass shit we love but can't describe. And WTF, they're not paying creators a piece? Come on. Fuck this fucking shit. Also, merch, lunchboxes, and teas, good luck. This is what led to the creation of Image Comics back in the 90s. Marvel wouldn't pay the artists royalties even as they used the artist's work to sell merchandise, so those guys left, and Marvel cratered as a result. But it's insane that Marvel won't pay royalties for overseas sales for the books. It's not a t-shirt or a lunchbox, it's the book the person did a cover for. It's the same product. Why won't they pay? If they're undercutting people as much as Dustin claims, it's not like it costs Marvel that much money to pay out the royalties. It sounds like the powers that be at Marvel are screwing over artists because they know they're one of the few games in town. Dustin said that people warned him to be careful because of Marvel's status and that he might get blacklisted, but who can blame him for complaining about not getting paid fairly for the work he did, especially when Marvel will use artists' work to promote the book? I understand it's a freelance gig, but at a certain point, when a company makes money hand over fist using an artist's work, it's unfair that the artist doesn't get a cut of that, especially when the initial pay rate is so low. Dustin goes into that, quote, I asked Marvel for I swear, $75 page raise in the last 15 years. The minimum wage in California is doing better than them, probably in a decade. Even that asshole Trump will do better than Marvel given a month. I don't even need that shitty chump change, but I want to see how cheap they are. All this equaling a royalty that's the, please sir, can I have 15 cents after you made your thousands in things? No response. So what am I treading carefully for again? I seriously forget. That's a fair point. I've heard for years that the page rates at Marvel and DC Comics are pretty low compared to what they should be considering inflation and what both companies do with the art. I've heard of page rates as low as $50 and cover rates as low as $100, and some of the responses to Dustin's post back that up. Zoe Thorogood said this, quote, the only time I worked with Marvel was for a character design. They paid me $100 LMAO, but I thought it would be cool just to have it done, so I agreed. They then, without my knowledge, used my concept art as a cover with zero compensation, and I got so much hate for it because it was not cover art. It was $100 sketch. I remember this cover. At the time, I figured that Marvel had just taken concept art and used it as a cover, which can work sometimes, but not here. Putting the whole cover thing aside though, $100 for concept art? For Marvel Comics. For an indie client, sure, I've done that myself. But for Marvel Comics, y'all can't pay more than $100? What if they use the design in the Spider-Verse films or more Spider-Verse comics? What's her cut? It's fucked up that they use her design and basically not pay her. That's not fair. Now, this is where someone will jump in and say something about freelance work and contract work and how the artists don't own any of this, and that's true. The artists don't own the copyrights or trademarks in most cases, but that's also the point of royalties. It's only fair that if you're going to keep making money using someone's work, that they get a share of the profits. It doesn't have to be massive, but at least 5 or 10%. If Marvel makes 50 grand off of some merch, they can't cough up $2,500 to give to the artist. Multi-billion-dollar Disney can't cough up $2,500. Let's say they had to pay out 50 people. That's just 125 grand. They've made that, lost it, and then tripled it in the time that it took me to say this sentence. They literally wouldn't miss the money. What is the problem with paying artists fairly? Obviously, this is an ongoing issue because a bunch of people jumped in to comment about Marvel shafting them, from Chris Stevens to Yannick Packwick to Jason Sean Alexander to J.H. Williams to Rob Liefeld. Hell, even Heather Antos jumped in, saying that Marvel, quote, paid assistant editors so low that when the government raised minimum wage, they had to give all the assistants raises and overtime. How did it end up like this? Well, mostly it's the powers that be in the company not wanting to pay the money. However, part of it lies with the artists, which Jason Alexander mentioned. Some artists are too timid to ask for more money, probably out of a fear that they'll get blacklisted if they rock the boat. Another issue is that most people don't know what anybody else makes, so it's not clear how much they're being underpaid. The biggest issue, though, is that they don't group together to demand fairer wages or refuse to work with Marvel until the company offers better pay. All it would take is for enough big-name people to refuse to work with the company for Marvel to change its policy, because money talks. They'll lose money if they can't get popular artists to do covers and interior pages. It'll cost them more in the long run to not have those artists than it will to pay the artists a fair wage and royalties. But that doesn't work if everyone scurries away when someone speaks up. They need to do it as a group and stick to it. But for some people, keeping that working relationship with Marvel is more important, especially with the ties Marvel has with Hollywood. So it's up for grabs whether other artists, especially big-name artists, will side with Dustin and push Marvel to make changes. Unlike the 90s, there aren't any major powerhouses working for the company. Marvel and DC have done a great job of making sure no artist gets anywhere near as popular as the Image guys were when they left. The last massive name was probably Joe Mad, and he left Marvel in '97. So it falls on the current talent who command higher page rates to back up artists like Dustin, or nothing will change. And this speaks to a broader issue within the industry of how publishers treat their creative teams. There should be no need for something like the Heroes Initiative, a nonprofit that helps older creators who are out of work and have no money. The people who brought us so much joy and entertainment shouldn't be financially destitute while the companies they work for continue to profit from their creations. Nobody's saying that they gotta get McMansions, but if Marvel and DC are making shows and movies and games with these people's characters, those creators shouldn't be broke or have to beg for money. They shouldn't end up like Bill Finger, who created everything you like about Batman, dying alone in a shitty apartment with nothing to his name. When these companies are making billions of dollars off of other people's creations, those creators deserve a fair cut. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.